This is the Vanessa Barrington Show. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the show. Today, we are jumping into writer's block, and I wanted to give you 8, yes, I said 8, different ways for you to get more into a writer's state and out of the block, the painful block. We've all been there. I've been there. I'm sure if you're trying to write a book and you're in any kind of creative industry at some stage or another, you're going to have felt blocked in some way. And in today's episode, I wanted to offer you some practical and also some really channeled guidance on how you can shift writer's block fast. Now, if you're an artist, if you're a creative, if you're someone in another industry, you're also going to find this really useful. So without further ado, let's jump into all about that painful creative experience of sitting at a blank page and trying to figure out what it is we want to say and just not being able to get motivated or let that information flow out onto the page. Alrighty. Hi, I'm Vanessa Barrington, also known as the Book Doula, founder for Healing House Publishing, psychic medium, and a woman on a mission to heal the world through stories. If you're a healer, coach, creative, or expert, I help you turn your story into a published book and a global movement that builds authority, impact, and legacy. This is not a writing podcast. It's a show where I explore voice, truth, spirituality, and what it really takes for you to trust yourself and share your story with the people who most need it. This is the Vanessa Barrington Show. So the first thing I want to invite you to do when you're considering, if you're finding that you're stuck, like you're wanting to write, but you're just not sure what you're doing, the first thing that I want you to know is the beautiful thing about writing and about creativity is you cannot get it wrong. And our beautiful broken human brains, but they're not broken. It's actually just how our brains work. Our brains are very good at overthinking and will often create a lot of doubt in what it is that we know. And because of, a whole range of different past human experiences, very human experiences that we have gone on, when we turn up at the page, we bring all of those elements of ourselves into that creative writing process. And so the very first thing that I want to invite you to do, if you're struggling with writer's block, is I want you to take some time to really get quiet and anchor into self-trust. Now, what do I mean by self-trust? Very simply, trusting yourself. Now, this is not something that you need to learn how to do. It might be something that honestly feels pretty uncomfortable to do at the start of this process, especially if you're someone that is not used to really getting quiet with yourself or really spending that alone time with yourself. I'm going to give you a couple of questions, and maybe you want to pause this and grab a journal and just journal on these questions to tune back into self-trust. So the first one is, what is your current view of what you know? The thing is, oftentimes we allow our brains to bring up all the doubt about what we don't know or what we haven't gotten right or what we may get wrong and all of those kinds of things. But, one of my spiritual teachers and mentors has this beautiful saying, when you know, you know. And in fact, we know our soul and we know ourselves on such a great deep level. And the act of creation, the act of creating something is really, if you consider it, an act of self-trust. It's an act of being able to tap into that inner knowing of what those thoughts and feelings are and what our experiences are, and being able to just recognize and allow ourselves to transmute what it is that we know, what we've experienced, what we're present to, what we're feeling, what we would like to share with others, and simply create. So your first step, your antidote, if you will, to moving beyond writer's block is to tune into self-trust. Now, in my program, this is something that I work a lot with in terms of my clients and really helping them to be able to almost, I want to say, turn up that self-trust, because it's something that can really get knocked around for us, especially if you are in the business of creativity. If you're in the business of creating something, if you're in the business of business, ultimately you are going to be someone that at some stage or another has put something out there and it hasn't landed where you wanted it to. And that can knock us around. That can knock our self-trust around. And so the reason I want you to spend time unpacking and really tuning into, what does it feel like when I trust myself? What does it feel like in my body and in my brain when I just trust myself? What can you be present to if you were approaching your writing with total self-trust? Now, the second things I wanted to talk about was fear. Fear, our most worthy opponent. Fear that is not worthy of our time or energy, though. When you're creating something and you're putting it out into the world, at some stage or another, you are going to face fear. And in fact, from what I have experienced personally and what I support my own clients through, what I notice is fear is actually often and ever present at every stage in the process. Now, this is something that if you've ever read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, she talks about this beautifully. And she has this amazing metaphor where she talks about having fear being in the car during the whole creative process. You know, it's like fear is along for the ride. But what she writes about in her book is the fact that fear gets to be there. It gets to be in the car, but we don't want fear changing the channel. We don't want fear holding the steering wheel. We don't want fear making the decisions or like directing us with the map, right? If you are in writer's block, there could be, and not always, but sometimes there could be something that you are afraid of. Now, if you're finding that, yeah, you are kind of freaking out, or you're going to write about maybe some heavy topics, maybe some sensitive stuff, maybe some past experiences that you really don't want to go back into, but you also know you're being really called to share, inevitably at some stage or another, you're going to find yourself in writer's block. So where you want to look here is you really want to acknowledge that fear is a very common part of this process. And when you can recognize fear not as something that is a part of you, but is in fact a third party emotion, so to speak, that doesn't have to attach itself to you. It can be present in your creative process, but it doesn't actually need to be driving your creative process. It can just allow you to just exhale a little bit and to trust and to be able to know that, you know, it's okay if you're gonna be writing about topics that feel sensitive to you or feel difficult to you or bringing up past emotions. And in fact, there are tools and there are rituals and there are things that you can do that can really allow you to not buy so much into the fear that inevitably will come up, especially when you're writing about those harder things, or you're creating from a place of something that feels a bit heavy. You know, that could be as simple as, and I've talked about this very simple writing ritual many, many times over the years, which is if you're writing about something that you know is somewhat heavy, create a ritual around it. That can look as simple as lighting a candle when you go to your desk before you write about that particular topic. And that once you've finished writing about that topic, just blow the candle out. It creates an energetic bubble, so to speak, and contain a container around what it is that you're creating. So what you're signaling to yourself and to your team, so to speak, is this is something that I'm working with. It is not attached to me. It is something that is outside of me. And perhaps it was part of my past experiences, but it does not belong to me any longer. The other thing I want you to recognize, if you're writing about things that are causing you to freak out or you're like feeling really heavy in your writing process, this one is going to be particularly applicable to memoir writers. I want you to consider the fact that when you are writing memoir, by nature of the way in which you write, it really requires you to look at your own experiences in your past as a totally different character to you. The fact is, you are not the same person that you were when you were in that situation, however long ago it was. Maybe it was even just last week. When you write, it requires you to consider yourself the narrator or the main character, or however you're choosing and whatever perspective you're choosing to write from. You're really having to look at the you, as in you, the character, completely separate to yourself. And that can be really helpful to move past that creative block. The other thing I want to recognize here as well is that there is, the writing process is very much like going to the gym in some ways. It is a discipline and a practice, which I think is why so many people want to write a book and yet they they cannot, or they stay stuck in the process for a very long time instead of being able to move through that and finish and publish and get their books out into the world. I want you to consider this. When you are writing, oftentimes, whether you're aware of it or not, you're going to write in a spiral. So if you were to imagine a spiral, how a spiral kind of works, it starts from the outside and it goes in. When you are writing, you are going to write in a spiral, especially for those of you who are writing your own story. Every single author that I have ever worked with will always leave the hard stuff to the end. Why? Because we write our way into the story. What I don't want you to do is sit down at the computer and pick the hardest, most challenging, traumatic, triggering event that's ever happened to you and to write that first, okay? You must build your writing muscle. And that is going to look like letting go of control. It's going to look like practicing self-trust. It's going to look like allowing yourself and trusting yourself to write whatever flows to you, and also know that you're safe in it for all the reasons I've shared just before. You are outside of that version of you that you were when you're writing, especially when you're writing those traumatic experiences. Now, a couple of other really practical suggestions that I have for creative writing blocks. So these two are connected, 3 and 4. First one, get out into nature. Nature is medicine for us. And when we can get out of our homes, out of the technological overload that comes with the fact that when you're writing a book, you're sitting in front of a screen, unless you're doing it old school. And if you are, no shade, I love that for you. That is epic discipline if you're writing in long form, as in handwriting your whole novel. And I have worked with writers that like to do it that way, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're finding that you're blocked, get yourself out into nature. Go for a walk. That's number 4. Go for a walk. It is so meditative to just get the shoes on and go for a walk. And perhaps if you're someone that already walks every day, go somewhere different. Go for a walk on a different path that you haven't been on before. Allow yourself to get out in nature and allow nature to really restore your system and nourish you and connect you back with yourself. This is very linked to the self-trust piece, okay? Because when you are in nature, you will inevitably find that nature is full of signals, it's full of support, and it's full of those reminders that nature does not request to grow. Nature simply grows. Nature simply grows whether it tries to or not. And much like your book, when you allow and let go of the control, that clinging to the outcome, and you just allow yourself to be in the process, allow yourself to let it be messy, you're going to learn so much. So if you're finding that you're stuck, get outside, go for a walk, get some fresh air, give yourself some decent food. Yeah, I'm looking at those of you that are living off Doritos and are trying to power out your book in 6-hour, stints. No judgment. But it's probably, you get to enjoy this process, and that's the other thing I want to remind you of here is, and I've been very guilty of this myself, I am very much an A-type personality. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And there's a lot of discipline that is involved in doing the work at the level that I do, supporting the clients that I support at the level that I support them. And when you're very disciplined like that, you can forget to just have fun, and creativity is meant to be fun. Okay. So if you are finding that it is not fun anymore, like get yourself away from the desk, go and do something fun. Okay. Go do something else. Now, for me, I have a lot of other creative pursuits, I suppose, that I like to do to flex those creative muscles when I'm feeling blocked, and also just for fun. So for me, that's playing guitar. I love to play guitar. I love to sing. I'll jump in my car and crank up the music. I will give you the, best run at karaoke that you could ever ask for. Music is a really beautiful cleansing tool for me, and I love working with voice in that way. So if I'm feeling a bit blocked, I love to sing. I love to play guitar. I love to listen to music. All of that is creative. That's all creative expression. That's all supporting you with the work that you're doing. For some of you, it's going to be pottery. For some of you, it might be getting a coloring in book, one of those mindfulness coloring in books, and just coloring it in. Perhaps you would like to paint. Perhaps you want to sketch. Perhaps you want to just get in the kitchen. This is another one that I love to do, and just cook up a storm. have a dinner party. You can be creative in so many different ways besides just writing. And if you're finding that you're not feeling inspired when it comes to your writing, go and do something else that's going to nourish you. Now, on that note, I recognize that there is a certain level of discipline that is required to see through the process of completing a book and publishing your work out into the world. However, I also want to suggest that if you are not loving what you're writing about, then you're forcing something that is out of integrity with you. If you are not excited, if you are not proud, if you are not feeling tuned in and imagining, even if you have to pretend that your book is going to reach millions of people, that it is going to change lives, then this is your step 7, okay? I want you to really spend time being in the frequency of what success is going to look like for you. Why are you doing this book in the first place? I want you to come from that place of why you decided to do this in the first place. Because if you're feeling blocked, if you're finding that you're stuck in writer's block, it could be because you've disconnected from that energy of why you started this in the first place. And there's no judgment around that, right? Sometimes when we are writing, we start writing about a particular topic and then it starts to take us somewhere else. And if that's taken you somewhere else, but it's somewhere that doesn't excite you anymore, that's okay. Just come back. What is the core purpose for you wanting to write? Come back to your joy. Come back to your desire. You know, there's that beautiful saying, desire is destiny. So what is it that you desire to create? What is it that you desire to write about? Knowing that is going to make the difference when it comes to your writing process. My final little tip when it comes to moving through writer's block is one that is so simple, but it can be easy for us to forget about it. And when I tell you it, you're going to go, oh yeah, damn, I've been doing that. That's why this has been so hard. Why do I know this? Because I've been guilty of it myself. So my final recommendation, if you're finding that you're in that writer's block, is to look at your editing process. Are you trying to write and edit at the same time? If that is you, I am going to lovingly call you out and say, please stop trying to do that, okay? It's just, honestly, it is really difficult to write and edit. You can do it. There's nothing wrong per se with doing that. But what you're going to find is it's going to really slow you down. The energy that you bring to creativity and creation and the act of writing is a very different energy to the discernment and the detachment that is required when you're in editing stage. Now, I know it's a cliche, but I'm going to say it, and I'll say it until the cows come home. Let your writing be full of mistakes. Let it be full of grammatical errors to start with. Let it be stream of consciousness. Okay? Let go of perfectionism. You cannot edit while you're writing. You can work on both processes, but not in the same session. When you do that, what you're going to find is your writing is going to take longer. You're going to overthink. You're going to filter your voice instead of allowing that channel to open and just to flow in the first instance. And you're also going to second guess yourself. You also can find that when you're doing that, when you're bringing the editing into the writing process, that you actually start to move away from the core essence, or like the macro idea, I call it, of your book. And this is something I dive into with my students and my clients in the Book Doula program, because when you're writing your book, if you're really clear upfront on the structure of your book, if you're clear on your narrative arc, your plot, you understand the macro and the micro, you understand what's going in your book, it removes the need for you to be editing while you're writing, because you simply know that you're going into a particular place. There's a destination that you're ultimately writing into, whether that's fiction or nonfiction. When you're editing, you're going to lose your way. You're going to lose track of what it is that you're trying to write about, because you're going to be so busy nitpicking on all the mistakes that you've made and, you know, this sounds crap and all the bullshit that we get into in our heads, instead of allowing it, you know, write that shitty first draft. So I hope that's helpful for you. And I want you to know that, if you're in writer's block right now, be kind finally to yourself. Understand that it's a very normal part of the process. And sometimes the more we resist something, the more it persists. So just honor yourself. In my program, I talk about scheduling procrastination time. So part of your goals, part of your strategy for getting this book done should accommodate the fact that you are going to have these periods of time where it's going to feel sticky, where you're going to feel like you're in the guts of the process and it's messy and it's hard. Let it be messy. Let it be hard. Good things come to those who put the time and effort in, okay? Trust yourself, have fun with it. And finally, if this is something that you would like some help with, over the next couple of weeks, I am going to be holding a free live training. Now, in this training, I am going to show you how you can get your book done in the next 30 days, even when you're juggling all of the things like me, 3 businesses, 2 kids, and doing the do. I'm going to show you how you can map your strategy and plan to finish your book in 30 days in seconds, not even minutes or hours. And I'm also going to give you some really practical insights into why the process may have been hard and what you can do instead. If you would like to come along to that, you can check out the show notes. You will find the link there to register. I would love to see you in this training. It is really a very powerful kind of creative burst of inspiration. So if you've been finding that you're feeling blocked, you're feeling uncertain, come and hang out and let's get you out of writer's block, because I want you to know finally, before I wrap up today's episode, that the creative process is full of ups and downs, and this is a process that you don't need to go through on your own. It is perfectly fine to have someone walking beside you while you go through it. And in fact, you will find that your very favorite authors and many of your favorite books were birthed with someone walking beside that writer. It's just that we don't always know that. So if you've been struggling doing this alone, feel free to reach out, check the show notes, come and hang out in my live training. I promise you'll walk away with some really actionable steps, some great free resources, and a better understanding of what has been preventing you from getting your voice and your story out into the world. I hope you have a beautiful week, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks so much for listening, guys. Thanks for being here, and I'm wishing you the most wonderful week ahead. See ya.